Hello, Dr. Mott. I have tried for about a day to get this recorded. I was going to have the presentation recorded on my phone, and then I was going to have the presentation actually up through HDMI up on my TV. However, my phone for the past day will not connect all the videos that I've already done to anything. So, been through with that about 2 days. So I'm just going to do it this way. I'm sorry that I don't have the PowerPoint behind me. This is the only way I can do this. I have tried for the whole week, basically, to do all these for like forever, to do anything I can, and I cannot get it done. My last ditch ever was today, trying to do it. I've already recorded these things about 14 times over. So I'll make this as quick as I can. I will send you all the PowerPoints. Obviously, they'll be in this email, hopefully, below. And then, if you can, please just follow along with me. This is going to be the PowerPoint on the biomechanics of the running form. Biomechanics class HP 393 should be the number. So, introduction basically. Running is the most natural form of exercise that we can have. We don't need a gym membership. We don't need anything. We just need a pair of shoes, good running shoes, preferably. However, though, correct form is the biggest and most important thing. A lot of people start running and they have atrocious form. It's just terrible. It's terrible on their bodies. It's not terrible. It's terrible to look at, but it doesn't matter as long as it's functional. But it's not functional for the healthiest part of them, basically. And that's why biomechanics of the running form is so important. It improves performance and reduces risk of injuries, and it overall improves running, basically, in the fundamentals of it. So going on to the third slide, why is it important? Again, it improves overall performance. It reduces the risk of injuries and reduces the severity of those injuries if injuries pop up. And it improves the gait cycle, which we will get into, of runners, which is basically the form of all runners, of all running things that happen, regardless of it's running or if it's another sport such as football, basketball, even baseball, running around the bases, things like that. So I talked about the gait cycle. So next slide's about the 5 parts of the gait cycle. The heel contact is the biggest thing. That's the first one. It's going to be in first and the last steps. The gait cycle will basically involve when you hit the ground first, we'll talk about the right foot in this case, but when a foot hits the ground, in this case we'll talk about the right one, hits the ground, leaves the ground, and then makes contact with the ground, the same foot. That is the gait cycle. We're just talking about that one leg, one foot. That's the gait cycle. It happens at both feet, but when you're talking about one specific foot. So the 5 parts of the gait cycle, the 5 steps are heel contact, mid stance, toe off, mid swing, and then heel contact again. Once again, as I was saying, the gait cycle starts when the foot makes contact, and once it makes contact again. So getting into the gait cycle, we'll start with heel contact. It is the first part again of the gait cycle. Will also be the last part, but in this case, the ankle will flex, and also the tibialis anterior will also contract. The calf will contract as well, but it will contract eccentrically, not concentrically. Concentric contractions will happen later on in the gait cycle. So the second part of the gait cycle is mid stance. Body shifts. The body will shift its mass forward. The center mass, basically, of the human of the body is stationed kind of in the middle, is kind of on top of the legs, basically. But it will be shifted forward during the stance to allow, in the future, the leg to be shifted forward so that the body can continue moving forward in the running. Ankle will also be moving in this particular part. It reaches maximum pronation. Remember how it was flexing in the previous one. The knee will stabilize as well, and the hamstrings or quads are starting to work as well. They are contracting eccentrically. Toe off is the next part of the gait cycle. It's the third one. ankle begins to now, instead of pronating and going into pronation, it'll now begin to supinate, as well as the calf, hamstring, quad, tibialis anterior, glutes. They're all contracting in this stage. Again, toe off is now the toe is going to start beginning to leave the ground, getting into the fourth step, which is basically the most important and basically the most has the most things in it that involves the most movements that involve this part of the gait cycle, and that is mid swing. Again, it's the fourth step. There are two parts in the mid swing that take up the mid swing. You could separate them, but I don't. I think they're fundamental in each of them, but it's still, in my opinion, still is in the mid swing category. Those are the initial swing and the terminal swing. The initial one is what it says, the initial swing, the initial swing of the leg forward, so that way we can get back to heel contact. Terminal swing, however, involves the majority of movements that are going to happen in this phase of the gait cycle. The initial swing will have the quads and hip flexors. They're contracting concentrically. I told you earlier how we've been having eccentric contractions, but now we have some concentric contractions. But then we get into terminal swing. Terminal swing is going to involve everything in the lower limb muscles, almost all the muscles, from the glutes all the way down to the tibialis anterior. You're going to have everything working. All those muscles are contracting, or activated, or moving, so we can kick that leg forward and get back to heel contact, moving us forward as well. As well as all those muscles contracting, you also got the knee, the ankle, hip. They're all getting straightened out, so that we can allow the swing to happen and prepare for heel contact once again, momentarily. And the final one is heel contact again. Basically the same thing happens in the first one. Foot is going to make contact with the ground, and once it makes contact with the ground, the ankle will flex, bracing the impact basically, and it pronates, and then the tibialis anterior once again contracts. And all 5 of those steps will make up the gait cycle. That is the gait cycle in a nutshell, in about 5 minutes. So after that, knowing that is important, yes, but there are things, and 2 major things that I think in the biomechanics of the running form that aren't described in the gait cycle itself, in the 5 parts of the gait cycle. One of those is cadence, and the other one is stride length. We'll talk about stride length first. That's the next PowerPoint slide. So stride length is space measured between foot 1, could be the left foot or right foot, but foot 1 and foot 2 in the gait cycle. So when one foot hits the ground and the next foot hits the ground, between that area where those 2 feet make contact, that's your stride. That's your stride length. Some people measure it from the same foot, but it's easier if you measure it from when they both make contact and they're both having contact at the time. You can tell this by taking a picture or a video and pausing it when those are at the same time. 2 things that are important basically with stride length, and they're both not great things. The important thing is not to overstride, and what happens from overstriding is heel striking. So overstriding is trying to stride out too far. This usually happens whenever people are tired, or people aren't, their cadence isn't high enough, which we'll get to in a second. They will begin to overstride, almost like trying to reach, as you're trying to reach with your hands out to grab something that's too far away. The same thing's happening with your foot and with your leg while you're trying to keep up with people in front of you, or trying to keep up with the pace. You're actually overstriding, and this leads to heel striking. Instead of landing on the balls of your feet, you're actually landing here. What's really bad about heel striking, there's 2 things. First thing is ground reaction force actually pushes against the heel. When you land on the balls of your feet, and actually ground reaction force will actually push you up and forward. Ground reaction force when you heel strike will actually act as a brake. It'll push you back. The second thing is injuries. Stress reactions, fractures, shin splints are all very common common things. Possible knee problems as well. All these things happen with heel striking, and that also stems from the overstriding. So stride length is a big thing to look at and to pay attention to when understanding the biomechanics of the running form. So the other one was cadence, and I was talking about cadence. This is measured basically how many times a foot, doesn't matter one or it doesn't matter, we're just talking about both feet. How many times a foot hits the ground in a minute. The average runner will sometimes be anywhere between 150 and 170. I've seen low as 130, maybe even 140 before. But the most efficient runners will be anywhere from 180 to 190. And that's how many times in a minute that foot's hitting the ground. It's a very repetitive thing. And the higher it is, as long as it doesn't get above anywhere between 195 and 200, the more efficient it'll be. The higher the cadence, the reduced risk of overstriding and heel striking, because the faster the cadence is, the quicker that foot gets back on the ground, and it's not reaching. Instead, it's coming back under the hips, under the body, to be kicked up again. This will also improve the gait cycle, the quickness of the gait cycle as well, that we were talking about earlier. So how do you fix these things? Basically, what I'm talking about, how do you fix the gait cycle? If it's got problems, how do you fix the stride length? How do you fix the cadence if all those three things have problems? Lower body strength is probably the most important thing. If you're not strong in your lower body, a lot of people are very weak. A lot of their joints, their muscles are very weak. It allows for a lot of problems, allows for a lot of injuries, allows for other things to compensate for what's going on during the gait cycle. These muscles are getting used a lot. You're not using your upper body a lot in the gait cycle and the biomechanics of running form. You're using your lower limb muscles a lot, so you need to be attacking those joints through lower body strength workouts, not at a high intensity force, not at a high volume, but at a decent one, and that's a whole different topic for another day. Metronome is the other thing. This is basically an app that will have a beat go on for however much you put it to. For example, I said 180 is a good number. That is usually the gold standard for a lot of runners. Have a 180 cadence. You could set this app to 180, and it will make a beep 180 times in a minute. And what basically is happening there is your foot needs to be hitting the ground when you do this every time that thing beeps. So this can also, I'll get into barefoot running in a second, but this should be done with the same as barefoot running at the end of runs for not a very long time, maybe 10 minutes at the most, usually a mile, or 10 minutes, whichever one comes first. And you're just doing this because it does get a wear and tear on the body. It's something new. The body has to learn and adjust to it. The same with barefoot running. Barefoot running is to stop, basically, heel striking and overstriding. Shoes do allow for comfort. They are great. Shoes need to be worn. However, if you've got a grass surface and you do overstride and you do heel strike, our natural form will take over once we run on soft surfaces again. And the body cannot withstand heel striking, so it will actually go back to landing on the balls of its feet, and it will run correctly when you go back to barefoot running. However, this is not something to do on concrete or on blacktop. This is only just something to do if you have a soft grass surface where you won't have any problems with getting stuck or impaled by something in the grass. Turf fields are great for this. But this, again, should be done like metronome for only a mile at the most at the end of easy days, and not any high intensity workouts, anything like that. So basically, at the end of this, I know we're running long here, but the conclusions of this is basically that the biomechanics of the running form is important. It is extremely important for runners to understand what's going on, how to prevent injuries, and how to get better. They need to understand this. They need to know so that they understand what's going on while they're participating in their sport. Thank you, Dr. Mott, and if you have any questions, let me know.